Joining us now to break down this election cycle is Erin Perrine, the Deputy Communications Director for the 2020 Trump campaign. So, Erin, before we get to Joe Biden and all that, I want to ask you about Attorney General Barr's comments this morning. He said that the investigation likely won't come after with criminal liability anything against President Obama or former Vice President Joe Biden. Is this still something that the Trump campaign wants to highlight going into November?
Well, we continue to be concerned about the targeting of Michael Flynn under top officials from the previous administration, and that should worry every American and the media. If this can happen to General Michael Flynn, this can happen to anybody. So there was clearly a targeting of President Trump and his campaign. Of course, that's worrisome, and that should worry everyone. So we will continue to have that conversation because there are plenty of questions that still need to be asked and answered.
And we do know that President Obama and former Vice President Joe Biden at least were briefed on some of the information in this case. And a lot of people saying just because there's not a criminal investigation going on into them doesn't mean that there's no abuse of power or anything like that. In fact, usually when it comes to these investigations, we could think back to the Horowitz one, it is abuse of power type citations with no actual teeth behind it. So people hoping that it's different this time around, but still a lot to be determined as far as that goes. But when it comes to former Vice President Joe Biden, too, every time we talk, it seems like it's the same thing. He's still in his basement. He still really isn't doing that much to reach out to voters. At this point, do you have to wonder, is that the strategy for the Biden campaign? Just lay low until the last couple days?
The Biden campaign needs Joe Biden to lay low because he's a terrible candidate. He's been running for president for 30 years, but if you ask him, he's a candidate for the United States Senate in 1918. He has no idea what year it is or what's going on. Not only is he a bad candidate, but he's got bad policies. He talks about raising taxes on the middle class, free health care for illegal immigrants, stopping deportations. No matter how you cut it, if it's NAFTA or cozying up to China, Joe Biden's bad for America. So the more they keep him in his basement, the more they keep the bumpers on him so he doesn't hurt himself, the better they think it is. But he's just a bad candidate with bad policies. And whenever he steps out of the shadows and decides to actually engage in a campaign, let me tell you, President Trump is more than prepared to take that candidate on.
And when it comes to Joe Biden, too, the former New Mexico governor was just saying that he's done a very poor job reaching out to Latino voters. And that was something we actually saw during the primaries themselves. Senator Bernie Sanders, overwhelmingly popular with Latino voters. And then Joe Biden, he had more of the black voters. That's something that really propelled him to victory in states like South Carolina and those other states that won him essentially Super Tuesday. That's when he started pulling away. When it comes to that realization, does the Trump campaign see an opportunity to capitalize that in states maybe such as Nevada, New Mexico, which were actually pretty close in 2016 and could flip this next election?
The Biden campaign has admitted that they don't see the Latino vote as an important group for them to win in 2020. Their deputy campaign manager said it herself. It's wild to me that they would say that and admit that so openly. Here on the Trump campaign, we know that Latinos are a very important part of this country and that they are people who are more and more coming into the fold for President Trump. We look back on the work we've done and we look back on the work that the Trump administration has done. Latinos support a legal immigration system, one where people follow the rules. Unlike Joe Biden, who wants to grant amnesty to millions of people illegally here in this country. A lot of immigrants believe, and we see this on the campaign in our polling, that if you were here legally in this country and you worked to come here legally, that makes a difference to them. And let's talk about the Biden policies and how bad they would be for Latino voters, especially those down in Florida, those who came from Cuba, who fled communist repression and regimes. And you talk about the fact that Joe Biden 3 times when he was vice president of the United States, Cuba was put and allowed to be in the United Nations Human Rights Council. I mean, when you cut it, it doesn't matter. Biden's got bad policies for Latinos. We know that they support President Trump, and that's a vote we will fight very hard to get.
And, you know, Latino voters think back to the Obama administration, too, and they know that there were some policies then that didn't favor them at the time. In fact, I think back to an interview with Jorge Ramos, who pressed Joe Biden to his credit on those very issues, saying not only are you criticizing the Trump administration for child separation, your administration started that. In fact, there's the photo back from 2014. There's proof where you can see it. And at the time, Latino voters were calling President Obama the deporter-in-chief. He deported more people than every other president combined. So I think Latino voters are smarter than a lot of the Biden campaign is giving them credit for when it comes to this issue. They're not a sure thing come 2020. But Erin Perrine, I appreciate you coming on tonight. Thanks for breaking down the race for us.
Thank you.